Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and
I'm
for the first
Hadley.
time, that's right, for the first time this season, we are joined by a guest. Hadley is back.
Hello. I'm wearing my Doctor Who bathrobe. It's not mine, it's my fiance's, but it felt right for the occasion.
Yeah,
Wow.
fair enough.
Today we are reviewing the newest episode of the show, the fourth episode of the 15th season, Lucky Day. Before we get too in depth, Hadley, I'm curious, why you decided you wanted to come on this episode. Like, what is it? Just something about this episode in particular, or you just wanted to just come back on for the vibes? Like, which one is it?
I can't tell you without going into depth.
Okay,
Oh,
well, I guess
boy.
when it comes up, we'll get there.
Yeah.
In general, though, what do you think of the new season so far as a whole?
It has been okay. I did not like Robot Revolution. I think it had too many ideas and characters, and not a lot of it was developed.
Mhm.
Lux was okay. Good idea. Needed a bit more on the execution. Would have loved to have seen more animation. Fitz relayed my ideas in the episode. The
Yeah.
well was very good. I'll talk about it more when I come back, but I've got a personal connection to Midnight, so that was a nice reappearance, and I really enjoyed this episode. This is probably my favorite of this season.
That's interesting.
Mm.
I enjoyed it when I saw it. I once again did the thing of uh I was kind of a little busy early in the week, so I didn't get a chance to watch it. And then by the time I did watch it, I'd already seen who the villain was. So once again, I have ruined an episode for myself by not just watching it on the Sunday. In fairness, though, like end of last week, I was involved in a production, so like I feel like this time I did watch it as soon as I could, and I've got no more commitments coming up, so I will be committed to not spoiling episodes for myself and potentially ruining them for me in the process. Fitz, what do you think of Lucky Day?
I have pretty mixed feelings on it, if I'm entirely honest. It definitely got worse on a second watch.
Right.
I think there's a lot of this story I admire, and the ideas are really cool, but there's a core issue with theme and characterization that I see what it's trying to do, but it's just not getting there. It is interesting that it's written by I don't know how to pronounce his name, Pete
McTeague, I think.
McTeague, who did Kablam, and you and I have
Kablam.
gone over in previous episode the issues we have there. Similar elements here. I think especially with the twist villain, and his motivations, sort of being against the powers that be, essentially.
Yeah, it is interesting that we
this-
have two episodes written by this guy, and in both cases, the villain is just like a dude, just like a normal guy. He also co-wrote Praxius with Chris Chibnall, which is an episode nobody remembers about climate change.
It's
It's not the spiders one.
No, Praxius is
the plastic one.
it's the birds that turn people into plastic. I think look, that season also has Orphan 55 in it, and it's saying something that this is the most forgettable story of that era.
Yes, it's similar elements, and I think certainly ethically it is an improvement to Kablam, because we don't have the Doctor and really the story sort of siding with big business in a very disturbing way. But I think there are still some blind spots here in terms of the values, and then that gets translated into an issue with theme, and both of these things are linked back to how Conrad is characterized. I will, of course, go into detail about all this, but that was the real letdown. Like, I just thought, especially on the second watch, I'm like, every time I'm seeing a technique that I really like, because the plot is pretty damn good. It's pretty clever, very twisty, subverting expectations. None of it is just coming. Well, I don't know about none of it. Most of it is not coming together because of how it's dealing with the themes in this story. So yeah, that's basically how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we have a season that has weirdly mirrored the previous in like superficial elements. Um, both second episodes of this season were linked to a form of media. In the previous season, it was music, and this time it was film.
And Pantheon
Both,
stuff, of course.
yeah. Both fourth episodes were a Dr. Light episode that heavily focused on Ruby Sunday. Um,
Mm.
and in that vein, if you're going to do a Dr. Light episode, I like the convention of focusing on a past companion. I think it's a neat idea.
Yeah.
Um, and like it it made me realize I like Ruby Sunday quite a lot, and I don't necessarily think that I've been like missing her, like in the sense of like her absence is notable in the season so far, because I do think Belinda is pretty good as well. But like it was nice to catch up with Ruby again.
Well, someone made a point, a YouTuber I watched said that Ruby doesn't really have any flaws or gets a character arc.
Yeah.
So she's an entertaining character, but it's nice to see her in like a one-off episode. But in terms of like watching her going forward as like one whole series, probably less interesting.
I will say, it was a very minor element of the episode, but I think it's interesting that we're seeing a Doctor Who companion who has an element of PTSD from their time with the Doctor. Again, this is not the focus of the episode. I kind of wish they'd fleshed it out a bit more, but that sequence when Ruby is like, trying, like, she thinks that she's just like seeing things because she's looking for danger, because she's just certain that it's going to pop up at some point based on her time with the Doctor, and she's kind of like, she gets that call from, she calls the unit, and Kate's like, you gotta, you're looking for danger, it's not there, and then she has to take the moment outside the pub where she does some heavy breathing stuff. Like, that's an element I would have liked to see a lot more, especially because this is one of the only times that we get to see something like this, due to the nature of the show being how as soon as a companion's gone, they're normally just gone. So catching up with one we've had so recently and having this small part of her character, it would have been nice to see that fleshed out a bit more.
I think that element, it is a bit more prominent than you give it credit for. Maybe I'm...
I didn't pick up on it, so...
You didn't?
Not really.
Oh.
Like, yeah, there's moments of her being paranoid, but that feels more like for the sake of the plot than intentional characterization.
I thought it was pretty intentional. I mean, especially with the ending where she literally says, I think I have PTSD. I mean, maybe you're more referring to the earlier scenes, but even then, the paranoia that sort of grips her, I thought it was pretty deliberate, especially given that that element, I think, as Cuffs has sort of pointed out, of like PTSD and recovering from the Doctor's adventures, it's never really explored. It honestly reminds me of a phrase that you came up with, I think, Cuff, years ago on this podcast, where you talk about the things that the Doctor leaves behind. Well, this is one of them, and as it turns out, it's not a particularly great thing. Granted, my own experience with mental health may have meant I identified with those elements more than I could have, I guess. But I thought it was a bit more prominent than you two are giving it credit for.
By prominent, like it's definitely there, and I think my point is I wish that the episode had been more focused on that specifically. Like, what we do get is a decent story, but if again, like, there are so few times that we get to see a companion after the Doctor, and I kind of wish that had just been the whole thing. I almost wish there had been no threat to this story, and it was just Ruby PTSDing about stuff, and eventually having to be calmed down by unit when they show up for no reason. I think that would have been made an interesting episode. Like the one that we did get, I don't hate. I actually enjoyed bits of it quite a lot. But like I said, I think it's just the whole potential being squandered. Like, it rocks up in that one scene at the pub, and then it's only brought up again at the end, because the element of paranoia and PTSD does kind of take a back seat when it's like, oh no, she was right. And if she had just been seeing things the whole time, I think it would have been way more of a focus.
I guess so. Um,
Yeah, I think I was here more for the plot and the politics.
Yeah, yeah.
I like the characterization of the Brigadier's daughter. Wish we got more of her.
Yeah, like I always love it when Kate rocks up. She's one of my favorite recurring characters. Not that we have many, but whenever she appears, I'm like, yeah, Kate's here. But I think I agree. Yeah, like it's been a long time since Kate has been given this level of focus. Normally she just rocks up as the units person that the Doctor can use the science of. But yeah, I quite like seeing this side of her.
Do we want to get into why I came onto this podcast?
yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. If
Yeah.
it's related to
Yeah,
this, go
please.
ahead.
Yeah, so much like The Well is a sequel to Midnight, this to me felt like a spiritual sequel to an episode of Doctor Who I have a particular connection for called Love and Monsters.
Yeah, I
So
can see that.
we got this kid, he has an encounter with the Doctor early on, and as an adult, he makes it his personal mission to destroy this man's life. And it's executed a lot better here, and maybe that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, look, I have been seeing that. I did see. I've seen more than one comparison post between Love and Monsters and this. Um, it's a fair comparison. I think the fact that obviously the whole episode in this, it's not told through the podcast like Love and Monsters tries to do with Elton's vlog. Um, but there is that framing device early on with the Lucky Day podcast.
Mm.
It is
I
quite
think it works
interesting.
better as a twist rather than something you're following the perspective of as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially because Love and Monsters like only half commits to it, where half of it is told with Elton's vlog, and then the rest of it is just regular footage that the show often shoots. What's interesting is that we do get the dichotomy here, where it's like, Elton has an encounter with the Doctor in which his parent is killed, and then, grows up and is just like a good dude all round. Conrad has an encounter with the Doctor, has a parent who is not a good person, and then also grows up to not be a good person. It's interesting seeing the flip side of it, and neither aspect of these characters' personalities, once grown up, is because of their encounter with the Doctor. I have no doubt that if Conrad had never stumbled upon the TARDIS, he probably would have found a different avenue to be a piece of shit towards. But it is interesting to see the flip from Elton to Conrad in that regard, especially because of the comparability of these two stories.
Yeah. And with the ending of Love and Monsters, you get the implied relationship between him and a slab of concrete, and we don't really know what happened between Conrad and the Sheik right after that bite, you know?
Mm. We can safely assume it's not that, though.
We don't have to.
We don't have to. I mean, when they talk a lot about the Shriek, not once do they say, "Oh, it bites you," and then, "Oh, watch out! You don't want to know the rest."
Well, it's those pheromones that they stick to you.
Mm. Oh, good lord!
Oh, so sticky pheromones.
Christ, you didn't have to go there. You're better than that, Fitz. You're better than that.
You didn't even have to have Sam on the podcast to get to this level. You just needed me.
I think we need either of you. In all fairness, like I can trust either of you to get us to that point.
To
Yeah.
be fair, Cuff, did you have some line last week about being balls deep in the well?
Oh, I'm not saying that.
Last
I'm not saying that I never go to those places.
Anyway.
Yes, let's talk about Conrad a bit more.
Mm.
And look, I don't want to. I was going back and forth on this a lot since I saw the episode. I was having a lot of like serious thoughts about if Conrad pulled this stunt in the world of Doctor Who, would this many people truly leap on board? just with the amount of shit that has happened since 2005 at a bare minimum in the world of Doctor Who. And they always have something where it's like, oh, um, this was a hoax. Oh, whoops-a-daisies, the crack in the wall made everyone forget about all the Daleks and the fact that the Earth got towed across time and space. But they seem to be talking about aliens at the start of the episode as if it's a matter of fact, which is a big difference to how it's been showcased in the past. I think maybe, and especially with what we see in Empire of Death, when everyone returns from being sanded, they react as if they know what happened to them. It's not like a Thanos blip situation where no time passes for them. They straight up they felt themselves disappearing into dust, and they felt themselves returning. If that happened a year prior, would this many people really be like, nah, I don't believe that really happened, that was a hoax? And I find myself flip-flopping a lot about that, because on one hand, I'm like, no one could possibly be that stupid. But then I look at the political landscape of the real world,
Yeah.
and then I think, maybe it's not far off. Maybe it's not too far-fetched.
And I don't know if this was intentional, because of just how recent this has happened, but the talks of shutting down UNIT because it's like we're using all this taxpayer money on something that isn't even real feels very much like Elon Musk Doge.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't think I think this episode was at the very least it was definitely shot during or before the 2024 presidential campaign. I don't know when Doge sprung up from that.
Basically at the start of his term. Yeah, it was a very new thing.
But okay, yeah, it sprung up then, but had it been discussed prior? Was it a talking point throughout the campaign?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. Well, in that case, this episode aged pretty well.
Or Russell T Davies is a Time Lord.
Mm.
Hmm.
We'll never know.
Something I think about as well is, I think there is a conversation to be had around is, should we have UNIT as it is? Do we want this whole secret government organization that's spending all this money on sci-fi lasers, or maybe we should be a bit more open to the public about how we're using the funding?
Sure, and if that had been the point of the discussion instead of just aliens aren't real, I think maybe they could have landed in a bit more of a a proper discussion point. But again, because we know that UNIT has done a lot of work in the past to save the world, it's less of should we really give them this much power, and more of a yes, we should. Yes, we absolutely
we should tell people about it.
Maybe again, yes, but and that just comes back to the whole do aliens actually exist subplot. I feel like if that hadn't even been there, and Conrad's campaign had just been, because Conrad's campaign isn't what are UNIT hiding, it's UNIT lies. And I think those two, while similar, are distinct enough that it means, because what are UNIT hiding? You can make UNIT morally grey. UNIT lies, they aren't, so it's unambiguous that UNIT are the good guys. And I think there's a different discussion that could have been had if there hadn't been this alien deniers bent to the story. And again, I'm not even necessarily saying that whole aspect is a bad thing, or that it's even again, I just keep flip-flopping on whether or not I think this many people would fall for it. Because I think
it's less an issue of the episode and more an issue of the show's world building. I don't think they really have a consistent statement on whether or not people know about aliens.
That's true. And I think that's just because it's very difficult to do that, given that we'd spend a decent amount of time in modern day London, but not as much as we could to get that answer.
Yeah. And you could spend a whole season on a plot where it's looking into public scrutiny on UNIT. They're practicing child labor as well. You can dedicate a whole episode to that.
Because when the teasers came out, I thought this whole episode was going to be UNIT have secret illegal alien prisons underneath London, and people are trying to expose that. And I was like, oh, that could be a really good like painting unit as like a morally grey, like do the ends justify the means kind of situation. And I think maybe that's where I'm coming from, because like we could have had something a bit more interesting about unit as a whole, but the fact that we didn't get that does make me a little bit disappointed, because as I said, the way the episode presents itself, Unit is unambiguously the good guy. And I think I would have liked to explore a bit more of the darker shades of what Unit may or may not be getting up to in order to quote unquote quote keep Earth safe.
Yeah, I think this show does often not want to get into moral nuance, unfortunately, especially with like something like Unit, where you have a lot of focus on them and they're like super cool and super wholesome. We got a lady in a wheelchair, we got a little kid, we got people of color. We're the good guys, and we don't need to talk about government or like secrecy and stuff. We're doing good.
Yep. I hope you two and the audience as well enjoyed that staggeringly long amount of silence from me, given what I'm normally like on this podcast. Yeah, those are issues. I agree with what you both have just said, but for me, the issues are more significant than that. I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying there, but they are the core of the issues that I have with this story.
Okay.
I think Conrad as a character is underdeveloped. I think the way his conspiracy theories are framed in the episode is ethically confused, and it makes the whole story thematically inconsistent. And as much as I admire what this story is doing in terms of the very twisty plot and subverting conventions, by the end, it is frankly very frustrating the way that these issues are dealt with. And I knew, even after watching it the first time, something about Conrad's characterization irked me. I just didn't know what it was. But now I think I have a pretty good idea. I have quite a few notes here. I'm going to try my best to just go through my issues without having to read them. But for me, these issues seem complex enough that I may have to read some of these notes verbatim. We'll see how we go.
Sure thing.
Yeah, okay. How can I put this? So, Conrad. So he's a conspiracy theorist, right? We established this. I think there's even a joke. There's like a post on the Facebook page for Doctor Who. It's like, oh, when your boyfriend turns out to be a conspiracy nut and yada yada. The problem is, it doesn't. That conspiracy thinking alone, I don't think that makes him the bad guy that we are meant to see him as. There are definitely other issues. He lies to and gaslights Ruby. He's got this really uncomfortable line about how I'm kicking myself for not remembering the name of the character, but the woman in the wheelchair. It's like, oh, she's taking up your benefits, people. That's where your taxes are going. And he's generally got kind of a nasty, mean-spirited streak. But the problem is, that stuff is not connected enough to the conspiracy theories to work. And it is especially a problem when, as you folks have pointed out, when you bring in the moral dubiousness of Unit. Now, to your point, Hadley, about Doctor Who not having heaps of nuance when it comes to, well, even themes, really, I do have to push back on that a little bit. I think there are stories that even we've covered on this podcast so far that do a pretty good job of exploring really serious stuff. I mean, certainly Genesis of the Daleks, for example. Dalek.
I'm mostly talking about this era of Doctor Who.
Well, this one.
Yeah, like the most recent two series.
Well, I mean, they did do the whole racism thing with Dot and Bubble. I mean, that was pretty. I thought that was done pretty well.
I don't think it had that much to say. Like, it was a good episode, and I liked the twist ending with them all being racist. But I don't think it had anything to say about racism.
Also, I don't think Hadley's point is Doctor Who doesn't want to discuss themes. I think Hadley's point is more in terms of our like protagonists and the characters that we're meant to root for, this era doesn't really want you to dislike them to that extent, to the
I
point that
guess.
will avoid casting any shade on them.
Yeah, I guess so.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Hadley, but was that closer to what you were trying to get at?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay,
Okay.
That's
okay,
better
sure.
words.
Anyway, but your point here with the strange way that unit is shown is an issue. Now there's one example I can think of specifically where unit is shown to be in a morally dubious position, and that's way back with the
Silurians.
Third Doctor with the sorry,
The Silurians.
yes, the ending of that episode is pretty grim, and you have the Doctor being pretty disgusted with what the Brigadier does. Pretty weird that the next story basically just goes back, from what I remember, goes back to them to being at least work colleagues. But anyway, so there's that. But if this story, sorry, no, let me try that again. If this was like another story that had unit be unambiguously good, like without the conspiracy theory themes or anything like that, just an average or alien invasion story, having them be unambiguously good, that works fine enough. I know, like I think I've talked on this podcast on how I like more thematic grey areas than that, but I thought like it's Doctor Who, right? These are the good guys, sure, whatever. That's fine. The problem with this story is that they try to engage with these pretty serious issues of conspiracy thinking and what leads to it, and what role does secrecy and the government have to do with it. But they don't come to any good conclusions about it, right? Like, if you're going to explore these issues, you need to do it with more depth than this. I mean, Conrad is a conspiracy theorist, and we're meant to view him as the villain. But when you look at what Unit does, is it any wonder that he, is concerned about government secrecy and a lack of transparency? I mean, there's literally the scene where Conrad is coming up the stairs with a gun, where the unit people hack into one of their employees' email and social media accounts. Then they hack into the live stream that's going on. Do you think that maybe that might be an ethical issue that a government might want to have some oversight on? Again, no wonder he feels the way that he does. And if you want to talk about, comparing it to a real-world precedent, it's not as if governments haven't had a horrendous history of lying to their own people. I mean, America and Richard Nixon. I mean, do I need to say much more than that? Apart from the fact that you've got Watergate, you've got all the horrible campaigns that the US got themselves involved in, where they basically just bomb the shit out of innocent countries for national security, quote unquote. The point is, there's a reason why people might actually feel that way. And
I think it's also, just to interrupt for a second, sorry.
No, go ahead.
If Conrad had chosen to focus on those talking points, again, I feel like the episode would have been a bit richer for it, because he would have been calling out something that Unit actually does that is
but they
morally grey and that the public should know about. But instead he chooses to go with the aliens aren't real angle, and it kind of muddies the whole message.
And the big problem is that if they really wanted to explore this in an interesting way, or to show Conrad as a interesting and more nuanced villain, they would have to connect his conspiracy thinking to a genuinely detestable or terrifying aspect. So they could have connected it to some of his misogyny. They could have connected it to the, again, nastily sort of conservative attitude he has to things like government funding. I personally believe a lot of the problems with conspiracy theories that are around nowadays, which is to say, let's be honest, right-wing conspiracy theories, is that they're rooted in some form of bigotry, whether it be anti-vaxxer stuff or anti-trans stuff, or you can pick and choose a number of them.
Yeah.
But given that's the case, you need to connect it to something deeper with Conrad. As far as I can tell, the only big gripe that he has with the Doctor and Unit is I don't like liars, and my mum smacked me in the face once when I was a kid. We need more than that. We need to see more of that backstory. We need to see more of why he feels the way he does, what led him to be so suspicious of other people and the government in particular. Um, Having it be like this, it's just frustrating, as far as I'm concerned. Because the fact is, again, if you look at um governments lying to their people, holy shit, there's so much things. Horrible experiments like Tuskegee went on for 20 years after the Nuremberg trials. I mean,
Mhm.
are we really supposed to think that having a basic distrust of the government is like how should I put this, like an unambiguously always terrible thing? I mean, and again, I've got to be careful how I phrase that, because again, I need to be clear. I'm not like defending any sort of bullshit conspiracy theories, but my point is Conrad's point of view is more understandable than I think Pete McTeague realized, and his subsequent framing of Unit as unambiguously good is ethically icky, thematically inconsistent, and just frustrating. And again, if this was any other story that wasn't dealing with these themes and showing Unit in this, haha, we're the good guys way, that's fine, I can deal with it. But
Yeah.
it's the fact that the story so directly tries to deal with it, but just completely misses, well, maybe not completely, but almost completely misses the mark, really just lets this story down for me. It's not
Yeah, I think
terrible.
no. I think I'm in
The
a similar place to you.
aristocrats.
Yeah.
TH.
I think I'm in a similar place. Like
Yeah.
there are certain things about like I said, like the whole like question the government's angle is completely missed. But like there are a few
Yeah.
talking points that I do think the episode that like the things that it's trying to show
Yeah,
are
yeah. Oh,
handled
for sure.
pretty well. Like there are two things I noticed like pretty easily. One is that conspiracy theorists tend to skew towards like the whole the bigoted views, like you said, like the
Yeah.
whole I forget her name, but she's in the wheelchair and he
Yeah.
basically accuses her of
Oh, this
stealing the
is where your
taxpayer money.
tax dollars are
Yeah, yeah.
going, people.
And the second
Reaping off the
one,
benefits,
yeah, and the
Yeah,
second
the
one, and
second
it's
one, go
something
ahead.
I've noticed more and more, particularly with the MAGA cult, is that
Mm.
when you show a conspiracy theorist the truth to their face, they will often deny it still.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the fact that these
Yeah.
conspiracy theories are so rooted in their like personal identity and
Yeah.
they cannot even fathom for a moment any kind of world where they were wrong. So they will
Yeah.
dig their heels in every time, find some new avenue for what they think being right. Like he like the shriek is a centimeter away from his face, and as soon as it's called off, he says,
Mm.
"Oh, you've upped your CGI, huh?" Like
Yeah.
like it, and I something I think you mentioned that you found the episode frustrating in various aspects. Those political ones I agree with, but something I also wanted to point out is that when the like in the second third act of the story, when the episode intentionally frustrates you, where when everyone's rallying against the unit, when everything's falling down, when Conrad's getting all this unearned attention, and you just want to punch him in his stupid face. And it's a really accurate representation of how people can feel when these ideologies take root in in the mainstream.
That is true. I'll give them credit, and I actually like the way that social media, for example, is represented here. Like it's
Mm.
dealing with
I
a modern technological issue, and like that montage, for example, that's
Yeah, on
pretty
the TikTok
compelling.
montage, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think its approach to being like anti-conspiracy is very broad.
it
It's
is.
particularly
Yeah.
focused on the idea of government efficiency, which is definitely a hot topic at the moment, and it is something that people keep going back to. I know everyone's like, we're funding transgender mice, we're funding transgender prisoners in Guatemala or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of ways you could have approached this. I think the broad approach is fine. What I would have liked
Yeah.
to have seen, was some legal implications, like maybe Unit gets like an audit or something. Just like some
Mm.
plot that doesn't just go beyond, oh, they're getting some social media posts that they don't like.
Well,
Yeah.
we do learn that they are at least briefly like there's some government thing that is being called into question. Something I'm curious about is if any of this is going to have any ramifications for the upcoming spin-off that seems to be kind of focused around Unit. The War Between Land and Sea, I think it's called. I'm kind of curious as to if any of the stuff they set up in this was intentional to springboard into that series. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when that one comes out, because I do know that Kate Stewart has an active role in that show. Don't know how much, but it is going to be a Unit themed show. So I don't know. We'll see.
Do you reckon it'll go the way of Torchwood, where in Doctor Who in the second series they were this big sort of organization, but then they had to go underground because of the scandal of Canary Wharf and all that?
I think that if that was going to be the case, it would have happened in this episode. Because that's a huge plot point for the larger world of Doctor Who to be handled in a spin-off.
True.
I don't know how I feel about Sorry,
I really want, like if they did the Unit spin-off in the spirit of Torchwood, I want them to get really weird in those later seasons, because I had so much fun with season 3 and 4 of Torchwood, man.
Sure, yeah. I have no idea how I feel about the new characterization of Trinity Wells as an Alex Jones. I think it made sense in the giggle when everyone was under the influence of the Toymaker, but now that she's not, she still seems to be like on the side of Conrad in like this conspiracy theory stuff. Even though like from what we've seen in the show, she is reported on way more alien incursions than literally anybody else on the planet. She of all people would know that they are.
Well, here's what's happened with Trinity, right? She got accused of something, so she's been rejected by the mainstream media, and she's gone the way of like Ruben and Candace Owens and stuff, where she's like, "Why I left the left." There's going to be a ton of videos like that, I'm sure.
Sure.
And joining us today on the Dangerous Ideas podcast is Roger Apker-William, who's going to talk to us about why immigration is such a terrible idea for the UK.
He wants to restore the cultural integrity of Wales. I don't see what's so wrong with him.
Oh dear.
Oh boy. It was nice to see Ruby's family for a brief moment. I really liked them last season, and I like the fact that they're like incredibly enthusiastic about Ruby's dating life. I think that's really sweet.
And
the grandmother I love. She's a good.
Like grandmother's amazing. It's great to see both of Ruby's mums interacting as well. Like that's like from the end of last season, that's a thing that's happening and going on. It's great that those two families have found a way to coalesce in a really seamless way.
I agree.
That's just a minor thing. We were talking about Kate earlier. And I do genuinely think this is the most focused that Kate's gotten in ages, probably since the Zygon inversion, where she's one of the two opposing forces the Doctor has to convince to step away from the button. The fact that, the lengths that she goes to in this episode, like releasing the shriek onto Conrad, it's a ballsy move. It's one that I appreciated that she stood her ground on the decision. I wish that the episode had gone more to go, man, Kate, that was kind of fucked, right? That could have gone sideways.
Yeah.
Sure, you know what you're doing? And it's, once again, coming back to the whole, I wish that Unit had a little bit more of a, I don't know about that. But again, like, it's a very minor thing, because when it was happening in the moment, I hated Conrad so much, and credit to the actor and the writing, but I was there going, ah ha ha, you fucker. Yeah. You're getting what's coming to you.
I love the speech as well she gives as she releases the streak.
Yeah. Great, yeah.
I think, I kind of agree with that, Carp. I think that that scene in itself, like watching Kate Stewart go, like, become that dark, that was really good and interesting, but it would have been better if it was in context of more nuanced characterization of her and Unit generally, so, yeah. This is just a couple of small things, but I do want to bring this up. Things that I admire about this story is watching it the second time, some of the foreshadowing and characterization was a bit better or more interesting. So, for example,
Right.
like I hadn't, for some reason, hadn't connected that at the beginning when Conrad's mum smacks him in the face. She says, "Don't lie," and it's like, okay, well,
Hmm.
that obviously they're trying to plan something in there. But then later,
Yeah.
when uh, Conrad first sees Ruby and the Doctor, and they're all sort of running away from the Shriek, the Doctor gives Ruby the antidote and says, "Oh, it tastes like a lolly or something," and it turns out to be terrible. And then she says, "You liar," and then we cut back to Conrad staring
Ah.
at them. So I actually thought, oh, maybe that's one of the reasons why the seed is being planted. He realized, oh, see, this is a guy who can't be trusted. Now, unfortunately, as
Mhm.
much as I admire the technique, it's not used, I think, in as interesting a way as the story thinks it is, because it serves characterization, thematic expression that's a lot more shallow than it should be. But it's still interesting and admirable to see that kind of technique showing up.
I think it's a
Yeah.
hard theme to pull off as well. Like the
Yeah.
idea lying
Mm,
is bad.
it is.
There's really not
Yeah.
a lot you can do with that. Wonder Woman 1984 did it, and that movie is just awful. The movie opens with Diana cheating in a race, and then her adoptive mom, I think, like the trainer, is like, Diana, it's bad to lie. Lying makes you a loser. Don't lie. And then I guess the whole movie's about lying makes you a loser.
Mm. I think The Good
So it's
Place
not.
probably tackled it as good as anything.
Yeah.
um. Yeah.
We haven't
Can
talked much
we?
about go on, Fitz.
Oh, I wanted to talk about the Doctor and specifically the ending scene with him and Conrad, because that's
Can we get
also would have
there?
been
Can we
interesting.
get there in a moment? I want
Sure.
to
Yeah.
talk a bit about the Shriek first. We have
Yeah.
talked
Sure.
like here and there about it. I do find it interesting as a monster, like this whole concept
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, I'm gonna use my pheromones to mark you, and then wait a year and then hunt you down because we love the thrill of the hunt or whatever it is. Like we just
Mm-hmm.
love like the fear in our like
Mm-hmm.
victims and knowing that they know that we're coming for them. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting enough. It serves its purpose in this story. I do kind of understand why it has a limited focus because, like, as interesting as it's used here, I do kind of think, well, what more could you have done with this? So, in terms of like a monster that was only ever going to get like a 3 minute focus, I think they picked a good one.
I
Mm-hmm.
liked the effects. They
Me
looked a
too.
lot
Yeah.
like the monsters from Ghostbusters, which helps
Yeah,
a
they
lot.
do actually. Yeah, that's funny.
I also quite enjoy the and you're gonna hate me for this, Fitz, but the Moffat-esque way that the story kind of time loops around on itself, like in terms of like the Doctor's involvement, because from his
I,
perspective, like the
I,
first
I
time we
thought that
see him
was
is like
I thought that
they're
was
half
fine
now.
enough.
Fine. Well, I just thought it was interesting, like the fact that the story chose to
Yeah.
do it at all. Like we get the first time we see him,
Mm.
it's the last time in his timeline, and then we jump back to
Yeah.
him and Ruby, which is a thing I've always thought it would be cool to see, like future seasons jumping back to previous adventures with Doctors and even old companions.
Yeah.
Um, and then at the end, when we get that moment, and I for a split second thought, wait a minute, how's this possible? And then we learn, no, this is pre Belinda. This, in fact,
Yeah.
might even be part of the reason he thought to go seek out Belinda in the first place.
Mm.
We know that it was because of the whole Miss Belinda Chandra thing, but
Yeah.
and that might have also contributed to his whole, oh, you're a deep mystery, Belinda. I'm going to scan you without your consent. The fact that he had heard the name
Mm.
previously from this person who, um, I guess we'll talk about it now. The speech that the Doctor
Mm.
gives to Conrad at the end. You threatened my friend, you threatened my world, blah
Mm.
blah blah. I think it's the closest we've come to seeing this Doctor go a bit darker since Rogue, when
Oh yeah, for
the
sure.
Doctor had that brief moment of he thinks Ruby's dead, and he says something incredibly chilling about what he's going to do with the creatures that did it. I forget exactly what it was. Um, but yeah, I like seeing him go. You made my friend sad, so you better be grateful that I'm not doing more to you, and I know exactly how you die, and I'm going to tell you. And I shouldn't do that because I'm a time traveler, but I don't care. I'm going to tell you that you die badly. And
Look, it's sorry. You go.
no, that was it.
Look, it's again, on principle and in terms of technique, a really good scene. It is very chilling, and it's great to see the Doctor sort of indulging in that sort of darker side. And it would have been great if he was talking to like a fascist dictator. Unfortunately, he's talking to a guy who, while horrible, he is, doesn't have all those thematic elements tied up enough to make that speech at the end really, really hit home. Because
I don't know.
again,
Look, again, like just real quick, again, like I don't think the Doctor is saying any of this stuff to him because of the whole "you think Unit is bad" thing. He's saying it because of his actions towards Ruby, and those
yeah, but
are like unambiguously like he was a piece of shit to her. He probably
Yeah.
like we don't see how far the relationship progressed. There's a very decent chance that they were intimate, and he was playing her the whole time. I think that alone is probably
True.
enough for
Yeah,
Doctor
that's
to go
yeah,
as dark as he does with Conrad, because like even though there's a world where he is painted in a little more of a morally grey light because of his attitude towards a shady government organization. He is a piece of shit to Ruby, and that cannot stand.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I think I don't know, maybe from the Doctor I would expect more of a, I don't know, like a bigger overview of the situation, but yes, it would be very difficult for him to be, ambiguous about someone who treated his friend so poorly. And it would also be difficult to write the Doctor in such a way. Like how would you, how
Yeah.
would you sort of get away with that? And it's not as if the Doctor hasn't cared about his friends enough to fight for them to that degree. So I guess that makes
Yeah,
sense.
this is a man who for ages was saying, we need to be cool. We need to. This is a situation where we have to treat these people with respect, and then heard one line of racism out of the guy's mouth and straight away punched him in the face. Like this is a guy who,
Hmm.
if his friends and companions and loved ones are insulted, he will go to those places, and
True.
that's incredibly consistent characterization. And I like, again,
Hmm.
maybe it's because this is a Doctor from before we know him now. Again, it's pre-Belinda. Ruby is probably a fresh wound for him. He's probably only just said goodbye to her.
Yeah,
I can
that's
definitely
fair.
imagine it being a situation where he's gone, oh, I've I've said goodbye to Ruby. She's with her family now. I'm gonna, before moving on too much, I want to quickly check up on her, make sure she's doing okay. He jumps forward like a few months, and then sees, oh, cool, she and her family are doing well. Jumps forward again. Oh, she's got a boyfriend now. That's nice. Jumps forward again, sees what he's done, and
Oh
goes, nah,
no, yeah, no, that's true.
I'm gonna
Um,
confront you now.
My
I
main
think.
issue with that scene is that
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I really like the ending with him getting attacked by the Shriek. I think that's just a great place to end that character on. And I get why you include this scene because we've got to have the setup for whatever Mrs. Flood is doing this season. But just in terms of like as a self-contained episode, I think that should have been the last we saw of Conrad.
Well, I think Millie Gibson has confirmed that Conrad will be back. That's
Oh,
to
okay.
some degree in the finale. I think she has said that.
All right.
Um,
Guess we'll have
so
to
I
wait
don't
and
know.
see in that
Yeah,
case.
I don't know what purpose that is for, but
Mm,
I mean, again, I could be reading something out of context. But Millie Gibson has apparently hinted that Conrad's story isn't over yet.
sure.
I think that again, it just comes back to because if the Shriek had killed Conrad, there's no way you can avoid having the conversation about does Unit have too much oversight? Should they be doing the things they do? You cannot avoid that in that situation.
Yeah.
Like even with the attack, Kate was clearly at the end being like, and it's the closest the episode comes to it. She clearly has that moment where she's like, "He'll live," and then like
Yeah.
she's clearly saying that as a way to like justify her action. It's
Yeah.
again, it's the closest the story comes to casting some shade over what Unit does, and I like that it's there because again, it's what should be done.
Mm,
But if you kill Conrad in that moment, you can't avoid opening
can't
that
have.
can of worms,
Yeah.
and the episode clearly doesn't want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. And I think, like, with that last scene with the Doctor and Conrad, I think for
Mm.
me, while both of your thoughts on this are definitely true, like it makes perfect sense for the Doctor to say these things, given the horrible way that Conrad treated Ruby. I think I don't know, in almost a meta way, like what the story itself is just saying about these issues. Again, if the whole story was thematically more consistent, and if it looked at these issues in a more nuanced way, that dialogue would have hit harder. Like I said, if the Doctor was saying this to a fascist dictator, that would make perfect sense. Here, the only main reason to me it seems that the Doctor's saying this is because Conrad hurt his friend, which again makes perfect sense and is good enough, certainly, because Conrad was a horrible person. But do you know what I mean? Like, there's just something missing there that I want. But that's
But
sort
if you
of
want
the
if you want the
where you are.
scene the way you want the scene where he's a fascist dictator, it's not even remotely the same story anymore.
No,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I say fascist dictator. That was just a shorthand I came up with, but you could replace it probably with other.
Yeah, like the Doctor's
horrible
given similar
right-wing
speeches.
nutters.
The Doctor's given similar speeches to similarly irredeemable villains in the past. And I think the issue here is that there is a lens in which Conrad's actions were not 100% unjustified.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it for me, unless you guys have anything else you'd like to discuss.
How are we feeling on that theory that Mrs. Flood is actually secretly on the side of the Doctor now?
It's looking less likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's now allying herself with Conrad. It definitely seems less likely that she's secretly working with the Doctor and is not. She's definitely the bad guy. I think we can say that with absolute certainty now. It didn't take long for that theory to be shot down. It was a fun theory while it lasted, and it could have led to a nice bait and switch, but nah, she's bad.
Do you think there's any possibility? I mean, I know obviously she's siding with Conrad, so but do you think there's any possibility that at the 11th hour RTD is going to just pull a crazy rabbit out of his hat and say, "Oh, actually,"
if Conrad's release is like step 1 on the journey to the bad guy's defeat, then maybe.
I think I really hope there is something more to Mrs. Flood than just she is evil and she's trying to end the world or like get back at the Doctor or whatever, because considering just how heavily they've been teasing her for so long, I really hope it's more than just, oh, she's evil.
Well, we've been getting Mrs. Flood teasers before we were getting Susan Twist teasers.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that she's got.
What's the first appearance of Mrs. Flood?
The church on Ruby Road. She's
well, the first appearance of Susan Twist is in the second David Tennant special.
It is? She's in Wild Blue Yonder, really?
Yeah, when they meet Isaac Newton, she's like one of the maids.
Oh, yeah.
She's one of the. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, she totally is. I forgot about her. I guess because they didn't really shine a light on it until like Devil's Court at the earliest. But you're right, yeah, I forgot about that.
What if what if Mrs. Flood is the Valyard and they're going with that story that we came up with for Two Who's the News Cuff? What if the writers are reading our minds again?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
Get those royalty checks ready, RTD.
Yeah, you should pay us for us coming up with an idea piggybacking off an existing Doctor Who premise.
Yeah.
That we came up with,
isn't it, Cuff?
Yeah, and by the way, a story that we came up with significantly after these episodes had already been written, shot, and edited.
Oh yeah.
Oh, by the way, on those like made-up seasons, would you be open to having a guest write the season and you write the guest episodes?
Ooh,
might be interesting.
That could be an interesting path to take. At some point, sure. I think I've already started thinking up the next season arc.
Yeah,
that I want to do. So it probably won't be like this go around, but I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah, hopefully I'm still friends with you guys in 2 years. I've been pretty good so far.
I don't see any reason that could change.
No.
For the sake of the podcast, at the very least. No.
Oh no. Oh, I can't be friends with Alex and Fitz anymore, but I gotta appear on Two Who's.
Yeah,
I gotta talk about We're going to talk about Midnight.
You think it's going to happen that soon?
I don't know. You can't predict the future. You're not a Time Lord.
Well, if we have a falling out that soon, that would be pretty, that would be not too far out from your wedding, so I would hate for that to happen.
Yeah. Have you guys considered, instead of Two Who's Predict, the new series of Doctor Who, Two Who's Predict what's going to happen to them this year? Just get real existential. A meteor hits my house, a million points.
You're just
Billion
feeding us
points.
with a whole bunch of new content ideas. And we have we have famously done non-Doctor Who content in the past. We opened that can of worms earlier this year.
Yeah.
Where does Fitz gets a girlfriend? Where does that rank in the improbability scale?
I don't think you want to know the answer to that, buddy.
Fitz, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give
Jesus,
you...
thanks, Cuff.
I'm going to give you an irrational fraction so that you don't really know the actual answer. It'll be 587 divided by 1 over the square root of 572.
Cool. I was never good at math, so I have no interest in solving that even with a calculator.
My God, after all that, what score should we give this episode?
I'm giving it a 7. Like you're right, the themes aren't fully realized and the characters aren't either. I don't know if I'm here for Doctor Who for specifically those things. Sometimes I just want to put on something entertaining. And I did find the unfolding of the plot quite good in that climax as well. So it's good for a Doctor Who episode. It's an entertaining one. I'll give it a 7.
I think I'm about there with you at a 7. Again, I had fun watching it. I wish it was more than it was, but that doesn't mean that the stuff that's there is bad by any means. It's fun to have a Ruby focused episode and to see what she's been up to. I love seeing Kate. I've mentioned that before. And I think the deviation of this kind of Doctor Who light is a fun one for the show. So I'm also going to go with 7.
I was seriously considering a 5 because I found that the letdown with the themes were that frustrating. However, I think there's too much to admire in this story in terms of its technique. So I think I'm going to go with a 6.
Nice. And also, shout out, this is the first episode of the series where Shooty Gutler isn't crying.
That's true. I did have a suspicion about if in that final conflict when he's not getting through the Conrad, is he going to shed a tear there? And that would have been my absolute oh come on, don't waste it there, save it for the good stuff. But yeah.
Yes.
Anyway,
6 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 from you. This episode didn't really impact our points that much, unless you have a prediction here, Fitz. We have a Fury of the Time Lord moment. I don't think we quite got there with Conrad. It didn't quite.
He didn't do anything. He just gave him a speech.
Well, less in terms of the length she'll go, but the darkness coming through is more what Fitz's prediction was about. Again, we didn't quite reach those depths yet.
Yeah, and I think I specifically mentioned it had to be him approaching a really dark decision and nearly doing it, but then being convinced not to do it in the end, and we certainly didn't get there.
We didn't get there.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't need to take any points there.
So I'm still leading 3,500 to 250. I only just thought of this now, but Hadley, if you were going to make a single prediction for the rest of the season that me and Fitz were to assign a point total to see if you can run away with it in the third hour, do you know what you might say to that?
Oh jeez, I feel like I haven't really been paying attention to the trailers that much.
Great.
I'm just trying. I'm gonna have to think. I'll think on a minute for it. You guys keep talking, and then I'll give you something. I have to give you something.
It is worth noting we are now halfway through this new season of Doctor Who. We're halfway through series 15. At the moment, we have, in terms of our average scores, the episodes have been given a 7.5, a 7, a 9, and a 6.67. By contrast, let me see. The previous season got a 7.33, an 8, a 9, and an 8.5 by this point, which is interesting because I do think that on balance, I prefer this season over the last. So that's a fascinating thing to find out.
Well, another thing is, I really didn't like 73 Yards, so it's one of
That's
those
Ooh.
episodes that's very divisive. So I could
it
see
is. Yeah.
you like the episode, so you gave it a high score, but it also has that feeling like, does it fit into the rest of the series here? This felt like it's still building to
That's
something.
that's true. Yeah. Like as much as we have like given the episodes the scores that we have, I definitely have seen less like division from the current episodes. There seems to be like a more like overwhelming consensus. There's obviously the side of the fan base that's like, oh, Black Doctor, we don't like. But putting them aside, this season is generally more well received so far than the previous, which I don't think is too much of a surprise.
I think it's also like hindsight is 2020. I think
Yeah.
the mystery of the first series is good, but I don't think the payoff really works as much as it
Well,
should. And you
yeah,
might
I
feel
Yeah.
differently by the end of this series as well.
yeah, that's true. I agree with that as well. I'm interested in talking like just considering where both seasons were at the halfway mark, because you got to remember that the general reactions to both Space Babies and, to a lesser extent but still there, Devil's Cord were not good by significant chunks of the fan base.
Space Babies was fine. I really enjoyed Devil's Cord. Not enough people
I did
talk
too.
about that
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
like we gave both of those decent ratings. I mean, we definitely liked Space Babies less, but not less than a lot of people.
Yeah. Here's my prediction. I think Mrs. Flood at some point will hijack the TARDIS.
Ooh.
That's a pretty good one, actually.
That's interesting. How many points do you think that one's worth? Because we haven't seen that in any footage, but it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, but that would be like a pretty big thing. I feel like that RTD
Yeah.
want to keep that hidden up his sleeve for a bit.
Should we go like 7,000?
Yeah. Yeah, sure, 7,000.
So that one prediction, Hadley, if that comes true, so if and no other predictions get met, you win the rankings, which will be
Let's
fun.
go.
But next time on the show. Oh, sorry. First of all, Hadley, is there anything you would like to plug or just say at the end of this story? Recently we've steered away from plugging stuff and just given a platform to say anything you'd like. So anything you want to say here at the end of this story as a sign off?
Yeah, I won't plug my channel because it hasn't been very active because I've been very busy. What I've been busy with is I've moved, and I got a dog. And I've been very happy about
Yay!
that. It's stressful looking after another thing that doesn't really have any autonomy, but he's lovely.
That's nice. If you were gonna plug something on the Stale Bread channel, though, the three of us and a few other people, we did recently film a short movie.
Yeah, purposefulness. That was for
Purposefulness.
the
Yep.
that was for the annual Joel Haver Oscars Movies Challenge. That's our
Peace and
first movie we
Hadley.
filmed entirely outdoors, and
Yeah.
it starred me and Fit. It's a very silly movie. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it was a good one.
It's a really good movie. I reckon anyone who listens to this, if by any freak occurrence you haven't already watched Purposefulness, go over to the Stale Bread channel and check it out, as well as the other features that we've made in a similar vein in the last few years. I don't think it's a thing that we're going to stop doing anytime soon.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, they're good fun. Go check it out.
But next time on Two Who's Review, it will be our 100th episode of the podcast, and we will
Woo.
be
I just
examining.
missed it.
You just missed it. You got a 99, which is a fun one. But we'll be reviewing the story and the engine, which from all promos seems like a very unique episode.
Yeah,
Looks like a lot of fun, yeah.
But until then, I'm Alex.
I'm Fitz.
I'm Hadley.
And don't be a Conrad. That's all I can say, really. Just don't be a Conrad.